Lorraine and Chris, Julie and I had the opportunity to work with them through the Executive Academy. Both of them have been through some significant change in the time that we have been together. And I would love for you to meet them and to hear a little bit about their stories and how they consciously, actively engage in leadership. So ladies, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start. I'm curious, what has been the most influential part of owning your leadership development journey? Like what's influenced you? What kind of shaped how you have approached that? And Chris or Lorraine, whoever wants to go first, you're welcome.
I can share. Go ahead.
I can start this off. So I think I was my own worst enemy. And Eileen, I feel for you. I actually was late into the career path. I wanted to stay at home and be able to take care of my kids or have a job where it was more a job and not a career. It's never too late to start chapter 2. I finally decided that I am a confident person. I know what I want. It was thanks to the Leadership Academy that helped me get rid of the imposter syndrome, or, what it basically is insecurity, and be more confident in myself. And which is also key, is having your community and your support group. Lorraine just happens to be part of my community where we can sound off in a trusted space if we're having issues, or asking for opinions to move forward. I have to say my previous position when I was at the Academy was regional director. I worked for WorldPay. I just Monday started this position as SVP for brand because I decided I can do this. I'm going to do this. And instead of being the typical looking at a job posting and saying, oh, I could do that. Maybe I could do that. I'm not sure I could do that. I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to do that because why not? Men will see 2 things on there that they can do out of 12. And they'll just apply for the job. So guess what? I did. So I have to say, from PayTech Women, my support group, taking the leadership course through with Stephanie and Julie, I did it.
You did.
And you can do it too.
Did.
You can do it.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
I love that. I love that. Well, for me, my reflection was a little bit different. So early on in my career, I was convinced that for me to be a true leader, I needed to have a large team reporting to me, and I had to have that title, right? That reflected that. And that kind of defined leadership success to me. And then about, 5 or 6 years ago, I started to attend networking events held in my city by a local women's empowerment group, and really started to enjoy networking in that way. The events were informative, they were inspirational, and I actually signed up to be a volunteer with the nonprofit pretty quickly. And what I found was, because I was attending regularly, there was new women that were showing up monthly. And I was able to become that connector for them, right? And be able to help them build their community. A lot of the women that I met were early in their career. And they looked to me for advice and guidance. And I was able to, in some cases, just simply share with them some of the pitfalls that I'd fallen into early in my career, and hopefully help them, avoid those. A lot of the women were new immigrants. So I was able to help them get connected and form their community on their own through my efforts. Ultimately, I joined the board, so where I really did have a people leadership role, and I was responsible to bring in all the money for that organization. But the point that I'm trying to make is, I realized through those experiences that I could lead right where I was in my career at this point in my professional life. And yes, it was maybe small and one-on-one type interactions, but those interactions had a really big impact. So for me, that was really influential, and I just kind of continue down that path on my journey.
Love it.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
So Lorraine, I'm going to start with you on this one, go back to you on this, because I know that you and I have had several conversations about this. What brought you the most clarity to figure out what you wanted when you were in transition and with
Yep.
your recent new role? What
Yes.
was really the thing that helped you the most?
Yeah. What I would say just out of the gate is, the fundamental message that I would give to all the women on this call is your professional path. It's your choice to make, right? The career choices you make, the life choices you make, they're yours. Nobody's going to talk to you about your wants or needs. You own those choices. So for me, what I did was I spent a fair amount of time in reflection. And I found the tools that we did in the PayTech Executive Women course really useful, right? So we had access to a lot of different tools and assessments that helped me understand, how I prefer to think and behave. What are my natural strengths? How do these show up in my work? What drives me? What are my values? So I was able to really gather all of that and kind of think about it and process it in a very methodical way. Like you said earlier, I thought about leaders in my past roles. Who were the ones that I really grew the most from, and why? What was it about them that I loved and that really resonated with me? I thought about what gives me energy in my job, what drains my energy. And I was able to kind of package all of that up and come up with some really succinct goals for me. And it actually really helped me during the interview process, because I was asked a lot of times, what are your goals? And even if I wasn't asked, I had them ready as talking points. So I was able to really share kind of the output of all of that work that I'd done and gathered. And I mean, ultimately, what I would say, you have your goals, you do the process, but a big part of it is as well, you have to follow your gut instinct, right? So, and you don't always have to follow what people say is the logical next step in your career. You need to kind of marry the evaluation and what you learn out of all of that with your gut. And that's ultimately where I ended up, right? I actually had 3 offers to choose from, and I used that process to kind of go through it. And I settled at the end on the one that I had the gut instinct about. That was probably the most powerful.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
so true. We have the goosebumps listening to this. Chris, tell us about your clarity, because you were on a similar journey too. What really helped you with that clarity and figuring out this next step?
I would have to say it was definitely my community, hearing them speak, listening to what they were going through. I realized, I need to be more confident in myself and see, where it could take me. I was always under the assumption that just working hard will get you promoted. But it really depends on who your leader is, who your manager is. Not all people that manage people are considered leaders. So and like Lorraine, I looked back at those that, I had that made an impression on me over the years versus those that I may have been under at the time that I did the Leadership Academy. So I went with my gut. I was like, only I can make this happen. I can't wait around for somebody else to realize, oh, she needs to be promoted or she should be doing this. It comes down to you. You are in control of where your path goes.
Absolutely. So well said, Chris.
Yeah.
So I know that this happens, and we've had a few comments in the chat. Confidence can take a hit, whether you've been laid off, as Kelly mentioned, or maybe you thought you were getting the promotion that you weren't, or you thought you were on a certain path and you didn't receive. What have both of you done for your confidence when you've maybe not gotten into the next round of the interviews, or something happened that made you take a dip? What were some things that really helped you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's completely normal, first of all, that there's going to be points in your life where your confidence does take a hit. And for me, I'll share a brief story, a recent story. So early on in my role search, I was engaged in an interview cycle with an opportunity that I really believed was the one, right? And it was the one that I wanted to land. And in fact, I was so sure that it was the one that I wanted to land, I wasn't building other pipeline. And they'd actually reached out to me. Their executive cold messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I love your background. I'd love to have a networking call if you're open," which I took the call. And, he referred me into the process. And it was a robust process. There was a lot of people within the company that I had to talk to. And they all gave me really positive feedback along the way. And it came down to a final presentation where it was a 1-hour presentation that took hours upon hours for me to prepare for. And the hiring manager even helped me a little bit. We had check-ins to make sure that I was on the right track, and he offered me advice and guidance. Got on the call, the 1-hour presentation, and right at the beginning of the call, I was asked a question by the executive, and I felt like I stumbled. So I got through the call, but I wasn't happy with my performance, right? I was really not feeling good about how I had handled that question. So not too long after, I got the news that I hadn't got the role. And, and to kind of make it worse, they said, "We're still looking for candidates." It wasn't like there was another candidate that they took over me, and they loved me. Like, they seemed to love me. I was getting really good feedback. So the point is, I had a follow-up call with them, and they gave me really transparent feedback. And actually, where I thought I stumbled hadn't been the problem at all. It was somewhere else that had kind of created this perception. So definitely beat myself up over that. And what I did was I needed to refocus. And I have what I call my swipe file. I think you called it your Attagirl file. So that kind of grouping of, recommendations by colleagues and leaders, customer testimonials, whatever it is, I kind of reviewed those and realized that sometimes the way that we see ourselves in those moments of low confidence is not at all how others sees us, right? And just understanding that this is a moment in time. And ultimately, I used that setback I had to repurpose that presentation. So all the work was not for naught for another presentation that I needed to do, where I actually did get the job offer. But what I do find is also hearing from other senior women that they struggle with the same thing. So I remember I moderated a panel called Silencing Your Inner Critic of very senior women. And to hear them say, one of them talked about how before she got up on the panel, she was looking in the mirror saying, "Oh, my hair's too frizzy, and nobody's going to want to hear what I have to say. I shouldn't be doing this." So like, just hearing those stories makes you realize you're not alone. This is completely normal. And it just kind of resets, back to the reality. The stories we tell ourselves are just that. They're stories. They're not real. They're not based on fact, right? So that was just my recent perspective with some of that.
Yeah, great point.
What about
Chris,
you?
what have you done? I know you've had some bumps recently too, and what have you done to build that confidence back up?
I'm sorry, was that aimed at me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I did.
I'm looking right at you, can't you tell?
Yeah, kind of like with Lorraine, it was crazy. I went to an interview, and I had 3 interviews with a company, and I thought for sure, I landed this job, to find out that I didn't, and it was kind of devastating. But what I did is, I was trying to find the positive in it. You know, maybe I was overqualified, maybe it's just not the right fit. I have to admit, I did read the book, The High Five Habit. And let me tell you, if you have not read that book, read it. It is the best. It gave me a confidence boost that I really needed to then proceed and like apply for the position I just, you know, started working at.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. So good. Ladies, thanks for your insight and sharing your stories. I think, you know, these ideas can sound overwhelming and they can sound nice and pretty. And it's wonderful to hear your stories of like, it was bumpy, right? And ultimately your story of success because you depended on yourself. And I love that. And I love both of you too. So I just want to recognize how hard you both worked and to say congratulations for getting where you are. You did the work.